We are here, we are live, we are ready, we are kicking, and I have my mug of tea. And I want to touch on something because it seems like the whole rumour mill is going at the moment. So there was a podcast, MLW, about 2 weeks ago, and Court Bauer made a comment about Dolph Ziggler and his contract apparently expiring, and it's been made known that if the right deal isn't made, and I know we hear this all the time in sports and in forms of entertainment, that if the right deal wasn't made, they may not stay. This story seems to be picking up traction. A lot of people are talking about this. I want to now throw my 2 cents, or my 2 pennies, because I'm English, into this story, because I have a lot to say about Dolph Ziggler. I have a lot to say about the way he was used. I have a lot to say about the talent that he has. I have a lot to say about the role that he should be occupying in the company. And I kind of feel that there's lots of different ways at looking at this. So what I'm going to do is take in all the perspectives I can and throw them out there. Let me have one sip. Hold on. Jeez, I fucking hate Fever Season. Right, back to it. So, Dolph Ziggler has been with the company since, 2005. We know the Spirit's God, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to him in Florida Championship Wrestling. My very first video on my channel was about him, and pretty much saying that this is a guy that has a lot of talent. And this is before they were even pushing the guy. Way before they were even pushing him. Now we fast forward. I look like a genius in some respects. I'm quite happy about that. But I want to touch on something I did a few years back. I did a video when Dolph had the Money in the Bank contract. And when he had the Money in the Bank contract, one of the things that I started to tell people is that if you compare him to other wrestlers like in New Japan Okada, who won a similar concept, a tournament that entitles him a #1 contenders match at the champion. If you look at how Okada was used after he won that tournament, the G1 tournament, and then you compare it to how Dolph Ziggler was used when he won the Money in the Bank contract, there's a stark contrast in the two. Okada was built up, allowed to beat people. He beat the best guys in the world, or in his promotion. He had a finishing move that took people out. He was being built up as a contender, a legitimate threat to the world champion at the time, Tanahashi. Now, over in WWE land, Dolph was losing every other week to Sheamus, losing to Cena. He was getting destroyed by everybody. He did not look like a contender. He looked like he would be out of his place cashing in Money in the Bank. And to be honest, the only way he would probably pull it off is by doing it under very, dubious circumstances, if that's even a word. And that's kind of what they did. But you see that the fact is, you see that when the WWE really wants to make someone, they're protected. However, when you look at how Dolph was used, as I've touched on, he was not really protected. Dolph has even said this in character and out of character in his own interviews. So it's nothing new that I'm saying here. But the point is, if you compare this to real life, the UFC, obviously, Jose's injured now. But the fact is, McGregor beat quite a few people to fight for the title. It's not like McGregor lost 4 fights in a row and then was awarded a title shot. How on earth could you sell an audience, a pay-per-view buying audience on that fight if McGregor lost all of his fights and then you said he was the #1 contender? It doesn't work. Contenders need to win. That's the problem. Dolph wasn't winning. Dolph wasn't as relevant as he could have been. He had the feud with Cena, which I felt was good for him. He had the run with AJ Lee, had Big E Langston as his bodyguard. That was kind of good for him, but I think if he needed to be a world champion, a main event guy, that he needed to stand alone, he needed to beat relevant people, he needed to basically have what Kevin Owens is having right now. But they wouldn't do that with him. They would not do that with him. And then he eventually cashes in, and it looks like in one night it's all going to be turned around. I mean, how can anybody forget? How can anyone forget that evening? Dolph cashes in on Del Rio. It's like the crowd reaction was almost comparable to a Steve Austin pop in the 90s. That's how loud it was. Fans were very excited after that. It was trending on Twitter. Dolph, for one night, was the most popular wrestler in the company. And then things kind of just went downhill. And unfortunately, some of it, I believe, is to do with the fact that he got injured. And he got injured for 2 weeks. He had a concussion. and it was like he was almost punished for having a concussion. Like, you know, how dare you get injured, it's ruined our plans. And then after that, he kind of never recovered. He had that great match with Del Rio, which I thought was fantastic, where they switched sides. And then what happened with him after that? Nothing. He was just there. He was just there. A guy as athletic and as talented and as skilled as he is should not be left to flounder. And I said to people, and I challenge people, and I'll debate this with people right now, if you think that Daniel Bryan is being buried, compare what they do with Dolph Ziggler to Daniel Bryan, and you'll see that while Bryan hasn't been used as favourably as he could have, Dolph has been completely crapped on, literally crapped on. You know, if you look at how he's been used in comparison to Bryan, at least Bryan got a Mania main event and the championship. They wouldn't even give Dolph that at this point. And then you look throughout the years, he's just left to flounder. He'll win the Intercontinental title every 6 weeks, then he'll lose it again. He'll be brought in to get destroyed by Sheamus or Rusev or whoever else. He's kind of treading water. He's treading water pretty much. He hasn't really been elevated to a higher position. He's been in the same spot for the last, 2.5 to 3 years. The exact same spot. So I think, and let's touch on this, I think, what if Dolph Ziggler leaves? What happens? What happens with him? If Dolph Ziggler stays, there's a high chance that he's just going to be in the same spot again for 3 years. Why not? Why not see what your options are outside of the world of the WWE? And it's not so scary anymore. It's not so scary anymore because now you have options. New Japan Pro Wrestling has become a powerhouse once again. You have Ring of Honor, which you could do some bookings with. You have a lot of conventions and appearances that you could do, and you could meet fans from all over the world, and you can make some decent coin out of that. You have AAA in Mexico, which is doing very, very well. Then you have, and of course, Lucha Underground, and that would be another place for him to go. And you have seen that someone like Alberto Del Rio has made it work for himself. Alberto Del Rio is getting bookings everywhere. He's all over the place. He's always busy. He's making money. He's doing some independent shots on top of that. He's doing very, very well. And I think that Dolph Ziggler in a place like Lucha Underground would be an amazing fit right now for him. I think he could have some great matches there. I think he could be revitalized, re-energized, rejuvenated. You've seen what it's done for Del Rio. Look at his debut in Lucha Underground. He came out completely fired up. And I think that the same could be done for Dolph Ziggler. Obviously, you've got Del Rio there anyways. You've got Johnny Mundo, the former John Morrison there. You have Puma there, Phoenix there, Mil Muertes there. He could have some very, very interesting interactions and matches with those guys. I wouldn't mind seeing him and Jack Evans get in there. I mean, there's a lot of options for him outside of there in terms of matches. In AAA, he could do very, very well down there. In New Japan Pro Wrestling, that would be very interesting. Seeing him in there with Okada, seeing him in there with Nakamura, seeing him in there with Tanahashi. He could become an even better wrestler going outside of the WWE. And that makes me touch on one more thing. You would think, based on the fact that the WWE has long been perceived as having this, this idea that if you're an independent guy or a guy from another promotion, that they don't utilize you and they want to prove that you don't know what you're doing and that their WWE traditional system is far more effective. That's what they've always tried to do. It's believed that they've always tried to do. You look at someone like Dolph Ziggler, who never was in Ring of Honor prior to WWE. He literally, he came straight to OVW, which was funded by the WWE, from OVW to the main roster, back to OVW, to Florida Championship Wrestling, back to the main roster. He was basically a legitimate homegrown talent. And you would think that they would push him hard, if not for the fact that they could say, well, this is what our system produces. Talent like him, who haven't been to Japan, who haven't been to Mexico, who haven't been in Ring of Honor, who haven't wrestled in Europe. You would think that they would push someone like Dolph Ziggler, who came from their homegrown system for the majority, all of his career, You think that they would push him just to advertise that, considering that they've got like NXT going on at the moment and they're pushing all these success stories. You think that the original success story in Dolph Ziggler would be utilized far more, but he's not. And that's another reason why I'm a bit confused why they don't do anything with him. Now, I'm not completely blind to his faults as a performer. I do think, yes, he can take some crazy bumps. There's a bump that he used to take to the outside of the ring where he's used to get hip tossed and he would dive into the steps with his back. I always felt that would end up costing him later on in his life. He takes a lot of bumps where he kind of snaps to the back of his head, which is quite scary. I will also admit that he can be very inconsistent on promos, much like Johnny Mundo. He can be very up and down. I do think that he has it in him. Maybe it's maybe it's a situation where you need somebody that, like a Paul Heyman, to work with him behind the scenes to kind of get out Dolph Ziggler's promo ability and tap into it far more. But I won't disagree with people who say he can be very hit and miss on the microphone. I would not disagree with that. And also the fact is, while WWE's perception, it's not necessarily the land of the giants, but they do still kind of carry that mindset. I can see them saying, well, Dolph's not that big, so we're not going to use him as much. And I can see that being another thing that they use against him. And it's a real shame because I feel that there's something there with Dolph Ziggler. I've always felt like that. And maybe WWE's loss is going to be Lucha Underground's gain. Maybe it's going to be Ring of Honor's gain, New Japan's gain. I mean, I'd love to see him in there with AJ Styles and Kenny Omega personally as well. There are so many options there. And I think that there is at least a 60% chance that Dolph may leave the WWE. Now, the only other thing you can say against that is, well, at least with the WWE, there's security and there's a contract. There's a security in knowing for 3 years, this is how much you're going to get paid. And a lot of independent wrestlers have made that point, and I wouldn't be surprised if the unpredictable nature of the world outside of the WWE, even though things have picked up, kind of causes him to re-sign with the company. Anyways, that is me. This is not my best video, to be honest with you. I've got a real bad chest infection. I'm going to stop. I want to hear from all the wrestling fans. What do you think is going to happen? Is Dolph going to stay with the WWE? Is he going to leave the WWE? Could we see Dolph Ziggler at Lucha Underground? Maybe that could be the catalyst to a season 2 with Dolph Ziggler there. Who knows what's going to happen? Guys, let me know what you think. Does he go or does he stay? If he stays here, there will be trouble. Oops, sorry. I apologise. Guys, take care and have a good one.